At this point in your project, you've already PCR amplified the cloned insert that you put into your plasmid. And now we need to take that PCR product and clean it up so that we can send it in for sequencing. As it is right now, you've still got the polymerase, the DNTPs, the template, everything else contaminating that mixture. And so you want to go ahead and remove all of that. To do this, we're going to use Qiagen's QIAquick PCR Purification Kit. For this procedure, we're going to need some new sterile 2 milliliter tubes, 2 tube racks, an ice bucket, a pair of forceps, P200 tips, P1000 tips, a P200 pipette, and a P1000 pipette. We're also going to need a QIAquick PCR Purification Kit. The kit contains PCR purification centrifuge columns fitted inside of collection tubes. The column contains a resin that can bind to DNA, buffer EB, an elution buffer, buffer PB, a binding buffer, and buffer PE, a wash buffer, which has had ethanol added to it. I'll explain each of these in depth later. To begin this procedure, we need to take our tubes of PCR product from the ice and place them inside of the rack. We need to add to the solution containing your PCR products 5 volumes of buffer PB. What this means is that a PCR reaction of 20 microliters will have 100 microliters of buffer PB added to it. This can be added directly to the PCR tube. Once added, the solution can be mixed via gentle flicking. This buffer will prime the DNA in the tube for binding to the membrane of the spin column. We now need to aseptically remove an appropriate number of purification columns from their bag using the forceps. 1 column is used to purify each PCR product. The column will come inserted inside of a collection tube. The column can be removed from the tube to reveal a membrane. Remember, if you're doing multiple purifications at once, to label each tube so that you don't mix up your samples. Now that we've primed our DNA for binding, we can add the entire solution of PCR product and buffer PB and add it to the spin column. Once added, all tubes can be inserted into a tabletop centrifuge, taking care to balance it and correctly and completely seal the rotor with the rotor lid. All centrifugations used in this procedure will be performed for 1 minute at 13,000 RPM. Once the lid is closed, we can start the centrifuge. Once the centrifuging is complete, we can remove the columns and place them back inside of the rack. We will then add 750 microliters of buffer PE to the column, which will wash everything that isn't bound to the column out of it. The centrifuge will pull this buffer through the column with the waste, known as flow-through, being collected in the collection tube. Once again, this centrifugation will be for 1 minute at 13,000 RPM. For the next step, we'll need 2 new 1.5 milliliter centrifuge tubes, taking care to label each sample to correspond with each PCR product. The wash buffer that we used in the previous step contains ethanol, which can be prohibitive of downstream applications. For this reason, we will remove the column from the collection tube, now containing the waste buffer flow-through, and place the column inside of new 1.5 milliliter tubes. These will be centrifuged again, allowing any remaining wash buffer to be removed from our purification columns. Once again, we'll need 2 more 1.5 milliliter tubes to be labeled. Once finished, we can remove our columns from the centrifuge, remove the columns from the collection tubes, and place the columns into the new 1.5 milliliter tubes. 30 microliters of buffer EB is then added directly to the membrane of each column. As the columns are centrifuged one final time, the elution buffer will elute or remove the DNA from the column membrane, pulling it down into the 1.5 milliliter tube. Once finished, we can remove the tubes and columns from the centrifuge and discard of the column. The tube now has a solution of PCR product inside of it, which can be stored on ice in a 4 degrees fridge for immediate use or in a -20 degrees Celsius freezer for long-term storage.